Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Still Loading podcast. Now, this is where I reflected a little bit on the Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Still Loading podcast. This is me, Ilona Brannan, here with you, and this week is when I get to reflect on the stories and the expertise and the wisdom of our guests so far, and kind of give my point of view about what they've said and kind of things that really resonated with me. We've had an amazing array of guests so far. So we've had Monica Holland, who is a startup expert in terms of sales and marketing and helping startup founders develop their sales skills. We've had Lucy Wolfenden, who is a scale-up expert with marketing. So she helps founders with their marketing and developing that part of the business. And then we've had Rebecca Jones, who helps with the customer experience and customer success. So these are three different aspects of a founder's journey and a startup's journey that are really important, and they all differ slightly in their approach, but I think they're all equally valuable and really essential to growing a successful startup and a successful business, regardless of the industry that you're in. And I think with, if we start with Monica, what I thought was really fascinating with Monica was that she spoke about the fact that when she works with founders of a particular product, often these founders are really passionate about solving the problem that they've built, right? So she likened the experience to like they're bakers and they're expert bakers and they love what they do. And you can almost understand that, because if you are going to be solving a problem, especially if you're solving a problem with a technical product, be a piece of software or even something, you know, really specific like a particular tool or something, you have to know that problem inside and out to the point where you can identify the gap and then you can identify the solution. So you are a real deep technical expert. That's where your ideas come from. That's how you've got to where you are. However, the trick is then to be able to sell that idea to everybody else. And the thing is, not everyone will have that level of expertise. And I see this quite often with a lack of communication skills, I think. You know, we've all done it. We've been really excited about a particular product or something that we're interested in. And we're assuming that everybody knows what we know. There is actually a particular bias about this. I need to look it up. But there is a bias about this that we all internally have, where we assume everybody knows what we know. And actually, we have to assume that people don't know everything that we know. It's a bit of a misconception to think everyone would think what we knew and so forth. So that, I think, is really interesting. When you think about a founder or you're starting up anything, you know, you could be an expert baker and you love making cakes and so forth. But you need to be able to sell that to someone else to then be able to get them to pay for your product or service. And that's where the sales comes in. And often, you know, people are a bit like, oh, I don't like sales. But if you think of sales as communicating to someone how you solve their problem, and then obviously if you don't, then you don't, right? You can leave that to be. And I think that is probably the sign of a great leader, when they, you know, are very confident in their product and in their service. And then they can actually say, well, look, if it fits, that's fantastic. I'd love to help you. But if it doesn't, then that's fine too. And that kind of links in really strongly to something that I've seen consistently with lots and lots of guests talking about leadership qualities that they really respect and admire. And one of them is integrity. And I think this whole sales bit, where you're communicating your idea and how you solve the problem really well and effectively with the skills that you can develop, but you're doing it in such a way that you have integrity. I think this is a really interesting component, and I think it's very topical when we think about leadership for the digital age, because actually what we're finding is, because of the internet, because of social media, and because of the way we can communicate on a global scale as a global community, people do need to have integrity and do what they say, and also be able to back up the claims that they're going to be saying about their product or service. And we also have a bit more agency now. We can actually complain on social media and say that hasn't worked. So these aspects, these qualities are really fundamental to be able to get a product and service launched and be successful in the digital age. So definitely, Monica's skill set is really useful for founders in that space. The other thing she spoke about in her episode, which I thought was really a great way of thinking about it, and it's funny because obviously I think and talk about leadership for the digital age quite a lot. And when I speak to people, and sometimes even guests, when I ask them, can you tell me about a leader that's inspired you? Sometimes they're a bit like, oh, I don't know. I don't think I have one. But Monica had this suggestion where you think about your anti-hero, right? We've had we may have had in our lives an experience of someone who was a terrible leader and just was like absolutely awful. So if there's someone that you can recall who was like that in your life, then they're your anti-hero. And actually that can be just as valuable to work out how you do not want to behave and how you do not want to become as a leader, as someone who inspires you. Because often we, as human beings, tend to move away from pain and move away from things that are uncomfortable. So that is a fantastic question. And I do pose it to all of you listening. Who is someone in your experience, in your lifetime, who is an anti-hero? I think with me, I can definitely think of a few. And for me, it was leaders who, weren't supportive for sure. But also for me, a big one, and this is probably like showing you a little bit about what, a really important value of mine, but someone who doesn't do what they say they're going to do, it drives me mad. I mean, I get that life changes and you kind of need to adapt, but that is, somebody who says, you must do this thing, and they don't do that thing themselves. Oh, it really, really bugs me, especially if you're in a leadership position. And I remember, I was being told by this particular manager to, do all these things with my job, but yet I saw them doing the opposite, often, saying, well, you got to do what I say. And it's a bit like, well, that's not really helpful. So do think about who is your anti-hero, and then what are the qualities that you do not want to have? What are the things you do not want to have or do as a leader today? The second person that we spoke to was Lucy Wolfenden, who was just a joy to speak to, and her work within this, working with startup founders with their marketing, because what she identified was at the very beginning, and I can vouch for this, you don't necessarily need a full-time 100% all the time there marketing person. You're still getting off the ground, right? These are what I loved about these conversations were they are for when you've literally just started. And one of the statistics I read recently was that in the UK, so I can't vouch for everywhere else, but in the UK, I think it's 1 in 3 people would like to start their own business. So that's an incredible statistic, and it just shows you how things are changing across the board, where people want to actually have the opportunity to develop something themselves, be that a business that they can use as their primary mode of income, or be that as a side hustle. And there will be more about side hustles coming on later this season. So do bear that in mind, because I won't give too much away yet. There will be something about side hustles coming up with a fantastic guest as well. So we've got more people wanting to start up a business for themselves. And, you've got the aspect of a technical founder becoming good at sales. It really is a valuable skill set. I cannot recommend it enough. Do, listen to Monica's episode and develop your sales skills. And then with Lucy, she offers part-time marketing, in a sense, to founders to help them launch and scale. And then obviously when they get to a certain size, when they can actually bring someone in full-time, that's what they do. And then they'll work with Lucy and her team in a more agency role. But I just thought that was brilliant, because you are addressing a need. There is a need to have some marketing at the very beginning of your business venture, but you don't necessarily need someone all the time until you've got to that real product market fit, and you know exactly where you're going, and you've also got the revenue coming in. And Lucy's worked with a range of different people thinking about how to, get their message out there. So really thinking about those two aspects. When you have a fantastic idea, great. You need to then learn how to communicate it really well and sell it and market it so everybody knows about it, and more people can find you. So I thought they were really good episodes. And I loved Lucy's point about relationships and about building really strong, meaningful relationships in your career and how they can really help you. Because it might not be, say, like a direct leader that has a massive influence on you, but it could be somebody else. And actually it's those relationships that can help influence you and develop you, right? So I think that was a fantastic point from Lucy. And then we had Rebecca, who was talking about customer success, because she is a customer success champion, advocate and passionate expert in that area. And customer success within the sort of software space and fintech space, which is where Rebecca lies. It's all about being able to help the customer use and utilize the product really, really well. Because sometimes these software products are really quite complex, and you need to be able to know how to use it to get the most out of it for your business. And she spoke about how, you need to think about the customer journey. Like, what is the experience for the customer when they're actually using your product or service, and what are those touch points, and how can you ensure that they're getting a great experience along the way? And not just that, it could be a nice experience, but are they really going to get the value that they need? Because we really do have to improve the way that we communicate with customers. It's not enough to just take the money now. You've done the sales and the marketing with with Monica and Lucy, but then you've really got to start investing in that relationship and building the skills in your customers to be able to use the products and services that you've got, but then also to be able to build the relationship. Because recently in the UK, at the time of this recording, there's it's global really, but this year, 2022, there's been a lot of concern about rising inflation rates and the different things involved there. And there's going to be economic volatility. That's just how economics works. So it really is about building those strong relationships, communicating the value that you create for your customers, and then that you're less likely. It's not an impossibility, because you cannot control everything. You cannot control every variable. But if you have a great relationship and you've delivered value, at least that will mitigate the risk of someone completely just leaving you. And in a software term, that's called churn. So when someone churns, they're leaving you. But if you have a strong relationship and you've educated them well and you've proven the value of what you deliver, then it's less likely. But as I said, it's never 100% foolproof. But at least you've done everything that you can. And I think having that point of view in your startup or business, what's the customer's experience of this? What's the customer's feedback? What's the customer's what do they get from doing this with us? Because you spend so much time thinking about how your product or service solves their problem, but really what's the feeling? What's the experience? People will go out of their way to tell you how amazing an experience was. And equally, they'll go out their way to tell you how terrible an experience was. That is just human nature. So knowing that and leveraging that for your business is really, really important. I mean, that's why things go viral. If we think about, digital age scenario here, the reason things go viral is because people either thought they were really fantastic or they're really shocking and terrible. And it's the same, in when you're dealing with your customers. So thinking about that from a leadership as in the digital age perspective, you really need to think about that customer experience, both if you are doing anything in person and online. What's the online experience? Those tiny little, touch points really can make a huge difference to retention, and to also thinking about, building that relationship. And the one tip I will share with you that I saw with a client, they were a publisher, a subscriptions-based publisher. And one thing that I just was like, wow, when someone was about to leave, to, no longer subscribe to their publishing, their publishing stuff, then they actually sent them an email, like they actually popped up a message just saying, okay, you're going to leave, that's great, but if you could let us know why, and also if you ever want to come back, it's as easy as this. And actually they found that people did return because they had made it such an easy and pleasant experience to leave them. And it kind of seemed really counterintuitive to me to actually make a leaving process easy. But actually, if you do that, because people's circumstances change all the time, then they're more likely to come back in the future. Whereas I know I've had experiences online where it seems near enough impossible to leave a non-live subscription. And I just feel resentful that I have to honestly go on a bit of a quest, an online digital quest through the website or the portal to actually leave them. So I think that's a really interesting point of view to think about. How can you also make the leaving process as seamless and as straightforward as possible so people still have a good experience there and are more likely then to come back. So you've had 3 great interviews and expertise there. You've got my insights from my own experiences working with startups and scale-ups. And I think this is the space that is really interesting because it's where the human element of business comes into the digital component as well. These 2 touch points, you can do them in real life and you can do them digitally. And I think they're really essential for any leader or any business entrepreneur to be thinking about when they're starting and trying to grow their business as well. You really need to consider all these aspects. And the thing that Rebecca said that really struck for me as well is that within a startup or a business, and I would actually say most small businesses that have to kind of run at pace, you're in a new business every 90 days. So if you think about that, if you're a leader in the business, even if you don't manage someone, but you're leading a aspect of the business, you do have to change and adapt every 90 days as well. And that was something that Monica mentioned. Leaders, when they want to get to the next level of growth in their business, they need to become a different leader. And that is the same for all of us. The situations that we saw 10 years ago in our own lives would have required us to have been a different kind of person 10 years ago. Now we're here, we need to learn new skills to be able to adapt to a different environment, both on a professional level and personal level, and the same will be true in the future. So I think it's really thinking about that mindset of continual learning and growth, and thinking about that still loading concept. You're never quite done. You will always be developing and thinking about how to be a great leader for the digital age. So I hope this has been valuable for you. It's a short one, but it's powerful. Do have a think about those anti-heroes for me. And also let me know what really you thought was interesting from this episode. I'd love to get more questions from you that I can answer. So please feel free to drop me a note. You can also contact us at hello.stillloadingpodcast@gmail.com. hello.stillloadingpodcast@gmail.com. Send in your questions and we can answer them there. And also in the description box below is a free handout, a free workbook. Down in the description box below is a free worksheet for you all about what's your wheel of digital leadership life, which is really awesome. So you can actually start to think about how to develop yourself as a digital leader. What are the skills that you have? What are the skills you need to develop? And for that, just go down into the description box below. But for now, keep listening. If you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe, and also rate us on the Apple Podcasts app. More people can find us if you do that, so I really appreciate that. We've got 5-star reviews so far, so please just keep the ratings coming in, and it would be great to hear from you. Please drop us a note. Thanks very much for listening. Take care for now. Bye.